Good evening, and thanks for your kind invitation to this celebrative meeting. Agrypnia excitata is an older term quoted by an old medical dictionary, the Blackstone Gold Medical Dictionary, and originally proposed by Elio Lugaresi and Pasquale Montagna, following clinical and anatomopathological observation obtained in 3 different diseases: fatal familial insomnia, a human prion disease due to selective thalamic degeneration; delirium tremens, the well-known withdrawal benzodiazepine or barbiturate syndrome; and Morval syndrome, an autoimmune limbic encephalopathy. Agrypnia refers to a condition of loss of sleep, usually severe in degree and persistent, and generalized motor and autonomic hyperactivation. Metabolic and pathophysiological evidence suggesting that agrypnia excitata is due to an interruption of the thalamo-limbic circuits regulating the wake-sleep cycle and body homeostasis. This is due to an anatomical lesion, as in fatal familial insomnia, or a functional impairment, as in delirium tremens and Morvan syndrome. Sleep histogram of 24-hour recordings documented in fatal familial insomnia, Morvan syndrome, and delirium tremens compared to normal controls a loss of sleep, in particular slow wave sleep, and the persistence or over-increased in REM sleep in delirium tremens. In particular, in FFI and Morvan syndrome, REM sleep fails to stabilize, appearing only in short recurrent episodes in FFI or mixed with stage 1 in Morvan syndrome. The cyclic structure of sleep and the circadian rhythmicity is lost. In fatal familial insomnia, polysomnographic tracing show a wake EEG pattern intermingled with subwakefulness or wake REM sleep we define it in other conditions. These periods are characterized by alpha theta activity and very short episode of a typical REM with burst of rapid eye movement and lack of muscle atonia. No sleep figures are seen. The same is true in Morvan syndrome and in delirium tremens, in which non-REM sleep is absent, with continuous fluctuation from wakefulness to sleep to REM sleep, and REM sleep with persistent or increased MG muscle tone and marked limb myoclonic activity emerging directly from wakefulness. In delirium tremens, non-REM sleep was absent. REM sleep emerged directly from wakefulness and was characterized by the persistent or even increased in electromyographic axial muscle tone and marked limb myoclonic activity, intermingled with some signs of presence of REM sleep atonia. The term excitata describes the increased motor activity, restlessness, and autonomic hyperactivation associated with the insomniac state. Long-term 24-hour actigraphic monitoring of patients with fatal familial insomnia, delirium tremens, and Morvan syndrome compared to recording from a normal volunteer showed increased and continuous day and night motor activity with a loss of 24-hour circadian motor rhythmicity. Plasma concentration of adrenaline, noradrenaline, and also cortisol measured in samples taken hourly over 24 hours were constantly elevated, both in FFI and MS patients. Day and night noradrenaline excretion remain more than twofold higher than normal levels. By contrast, melatonin secretion was constantly reduced and lacked its physiological nocturnal peaks. The same high values is true for example, mean arterial pressure value during the 24 hours. The third characteristic aspect of agrypnia excitata consists of oniric stupor episode, very typical episode characterized by stereotyped gesture mimicking ordinary daily life activity. When left alone, both during day and night, patient lapse in an oniric state, characterized by complex and quasi-purposeful gesture and movements. During this episode, patient, as in this case of fatal familial insomnia, make a simple automatic gesture such as buttoning or unbuttoning their pajamas, or in other cases, mimicking the act of combing their hair or washing hands. The semiological aspect of oniric stupor is very similar between different patients and is the same as the patient described very well by Stern in 1939 as a severe dementia associated with bilateral symmetrical degeneration of the thalamus. Stern had made an excellent description emphasizing that the patient ignored attempts at examination and repeatedly buttoned his pajamas or turned on his side. Oniric stupor characterized also patients with Morvan syndrome and delirium tremens.
The features of agrypnia excitata are shared by fatal familial insomnia, Morvan syndrome, and delirium tremens. This patient is agitated and enacting a dream. The polygraphic tracing is in between wake and REM sleep and is typical of EEG patterns in these patients. The patient's gestures are very similar to the enacted dreams or oniric stupor recorded in fatal familial insomnia patients. Delirium tremens. This patient presents an atypical or minor form of delirium tremens. His words and gestures, similar to those seen in fatal familial insomnia and Morvan's chorea, are dream-related. The polygraphic recording comprises alternating and intermingled tracings of wake and REM sleep without atonia. The patient has violent involuntary myoclonic jerks, which recur at varying intervals, as in fatal familial insomnia and Morvan's chorea. These last images compare the behavior of patients with fatal familial insomnia, Morvan's chorea, and alcohol withdrawal syndrome. As you can see, the clinical features are identical in all three cases.
Oneiric stupor bears some resemblance to RBD, but the two entities are clearly different. REM behavior disorder arises from a normal sleep-wake cycle in which the only abnormality is the lack of muscle autonomy. Oneiric stupor arises in a context of severe alteration in sleep structure with a profound loss of slow wave sleep and the predominance of a mixed state with feature of both stage 1 non-REM and REM sleep. Oneiric stupor are not restricted to the latter part of the night like REM behavior disorder, but occur throughout the night due to the loss of the physiological sleep structure. Oneiric stupor tend to appear in cluster subcontinuously if the patient is left alone and not stimulated. Oneiric stupor usually lasts longer than RBD episode. During oneiric stupor, patients present quite stereotyped and repetitive gestures, neutral activities, mimicking daily life activities, probably influenced by their routine or hobbies. When asked about their behaviors, they tend to describe the single oneiric shift. During REM behavior is usually complex and violent, the behavior, and represent the enactment of a true dream in which emotion and memories are transformed into a fantastic movie-like plot. So, summing up, the three semiological key aspects of agrypnia excitata are the disruption of the sleep-wake cycle, a continuous day and night motor, sympathetic, and aminergic overactivity, and episodes of oneiric stupor. Disruption of the sleep-wake rhythm consists of the disappearance of spindle delta activities and the persistent or sometimes even increase in REM sleep. However, REM fails to stabilize, appearing only in short recurrent episodes as in FFI or mixed with stage 1 sleep as in Morvan syndrome and delirium tremens. The generalized motor, sympathetic, and aminergic activation seems to result from the interruption of the intralimbic circuit linking the major orbital frontal cortex and other basal forebrain formation to the hypothalamus and brainstem through the thalamus, in particular mediodorsal thalamic nuclei and rostral part of the reticular thalamic nucleus. Spindle and delta activities invariably disappear in agrypnia excitata, probably because the thalamo is the structure more severely damaged, and thalamocortical and corticothalamic circuits are deeply involved by the pathological process. REM sleep, on the contrary, continues to be present or even becomes overrepresented until the late phases of the disease because its spontaneous generator is undamaged and transmission of the signal originating from the REM system to the forebrain follows extrathalamic pathways as originally proposed by Jouvet. The G features, which behaviorally correspond to drowsiness, do not seem to be affected by thalamic degeneration. Thus, the loss of sleep selectively concerns spindling and delta activity. These findings suggest that the so-called stage 1 non-REM sleep and slow wave sleep generators do not coincide. If this is the case, there are 3 types and not 2 types of sleep, as we have been used to thinking, and stage 1 non-REM could correspond phylogenetically to indeterminate or pre-sleep, the only type of sleep seen in poikilothermic animals, and ontogenetically to the only type of sleep present in mammals born immature. Under the physiological condition, stage 1 sleep, non-REM slow wave, and paradoxical sleep alternate and recur according to well-established patterns. Under pathological condition, however, the three types of sleep may be dissociated, giving rise to diseases. Thanks a lot for your attention.